How does an unpaid intern with zero playing experience become the mastermind behind not one, but two Super Bowl winning teams? Howie Roseman didn't just climb the ranks, he rewrote the blueprint for front office success. In this video, we show you how Howie Roseman built a powerhouse, overcame career-threatening setbacks, and made franchise-altering decisions like trading up for Carson Wentz, signing Nick Foles, and betting big on Jalen Hurts. Stay tuned, because Roseman's rise is one of the most unexpected and fascinating in sports history. Confetti rains down, the roar of the crowd fills the air, and cameras zoom in on Howie Roseman as he holds the Lombardi Trophy high. The Philadelphia Eagles just dominated the Kansas City Chiefs 40-22 in Super Bowl 59, and Roseman, the architect behind it all, he stands in the center of the celebration. Broadcasters repeat his name over and over. Analysts call him the mastermind. Players hugged him, knowing the roster he built was the reason they were champions. If you thought Roseman's rise to this moment was smooth, think again. He started from the bottom, clawed his way up, and had numerous setbacks to even get to this point as a two-time Super Bowl champion. How does one go from an unpaid intern to one of the most powerful executives in the NFL? That answer starts decades ago, with a kid who refused to take no for an answer. Roseman's obsession with football started in childhood. He wasn't from a football family. He wasn't a great player. However, from the moment he understood the game, he knew he wanted to be a general manager, and he let the football world know it. By high school, he was already writing letters, hundreds of them, to every NFL team, begging for a chance. Executives ignored him. Some even joked about the persistent kid from Jersey who wouldn't stop sending them letters. By the time he had finished law school at Fordham, that number had reached over 1,000 letters. Finally, in the year 2000, one team answered. The Philadelphia Eagles gave him an unpaid internship working on salary cap issues. It wasn't glamorous, and it wasn't permanent, but it got his foot in the door, and that's key. At the time, the Eagles were in a transition. Andy Reid had just taken over as head coach, and the franchise was trying to rebuild around a young quarterback named Donovan McNabb. Roseman, though far from a decision maker, made sure to soak up every detail he could. He memorized the salary cap rules, and he studied contract structure. He learned how rosters were built, and most importantly, he refused to be ignored. Couldn't be a secret. By 2003, his effort had paid off. He earned a promotion to Director of Football Administration. 3 years later, he climbed higher to Vice President of Football Administration. Suddenly, he wasn't just a salary cap guy, he was negotiating contract, making financial decisions, and proving that he wasn't just the intern who stayed around and got lucky. Through the mid-2000s, Philadelphia became a powerhouse. The Eagles reached 4 straight NFC Championship games between 2001 and 04, and finally broke through to the Super Bowl in 2004. They lost to the Patriots, but the franchise was thriving. The roster was young, competitive, and financially sound. Behind the scenes, Roseman was taking notes. In 2008, he made another leap, Vice President of Player Personnel. This was a huge shift. Now he wasn't just handling contracts. He was scouting talent. He was evaluating draft picks. He was actually helping construct the roster. 2 years later, the biggest move yet. In 2010, Howie Roseman is named GM of the Philadelphia Eagles. At the time, he was the youngest GM in the league. With a catch, he wasn't really in charge. Andy Reid still had final say over personnel, which meant Roseman had the title, but not the power. So what did he do? He learned. He sat back, observed, waited for the right moment. That moment came in 2012. Eagles fired Reid after a disastrous 4-12 season. With a coaching vacancy and a roster in need of a reset, Roseman was finally in a position to make an impact. He played a major role in the coaching search, and the Eagles ultimately landed on Chip Kelly, an offensive guru from the University of Oregon. Kelly's fast-paced system was supposed to revolutionize the league, and Roseman's job, build a roster that could work for Kelly. Right away, the results were promising. 2013, Kelly's first season, the Eagles roar back to a 10-6 record. They win the NFC East, and one of the most exciting offenses in the NFL behind him. Roseman worked behind the scenes, pulling the strings, making sure the roster had the right balance of veteran leadership and young talent. He managed the salary cap to keep the team financially flexible while making key additions. But behind the scenes, things were getting tense. Kelly had a taste for power, and he wanted more. Roseman and Kelly had different ideas behind roster construction. Kelly wanted his types of players, and he wanted that control. And he didn't want to debate with Howie Roseman. He wanted to make the decisions for himself. And that put Kelly on a collision course with Roseman, with one thinking about short-term success and the other about long-term sustainability. The tension escalated quickly. By the time the 13th season had ended, the Eagles were no longer a struggling franchise. Kelly's offense had turned heads and the team had improved 6 games, so there was excitement about the future. But behind closed doors, things were reaching a breaking point. Who was running the team, Kelly or Roseman? The battle for control had begun, and soon it would explode in a way that no one saw coming. I'll tell you all about it, but first, hit that subscribe button for more on the business of sports. Roseman had spent years climbing the Eagles front office ladder, as we discussed, going from unpaid intern to general manager, mastering the salary cap, and then shaping the roster. But Kelly, fresh off his first NFL season, wanted more than just coaching duties. He wanted full control of player personnel, and in early 2015, team owner Jeffrey Lurie made a decision that shocked the organization and the NFL. He gave Kelly what he wanted. Roseman was reassigned. His title changed to Executive Vice President of Football Operations. In reality, Eagles had stripped him of his GM role. Kelly oversaw the draft, free agency, all the roster moves. Roseman wasn't calling the shots. For most executives, this would have been the end. Roll credits, move on to the next thing. A public demotion? The perceived humiliation? But that's what set Howie Roseman apart. He stuck it out. Wasn't going anywhere. He poured himself into studying team building strategies across the league, analyzing successful organizations, and refining his approach. He knew that he would be back, and when he did, he'd be better than ever. Kelly, meanwhile, was in over his skis. He gutted the roster of key leaders and veterans, like trading all-pro running back LaShawn McCoy to Buffalo. His free agent splashes were running back DeMarco Murray and corner Byron Maxwell, moves that backfired almost instantly. The Eagles regressed to 7-9 in 2015. Kelly's vision had collapsed, and by December, fired. With Kelly gone, Lurie turned to the one person he trusted to fix this mess. Who else but Howie Roseman? Roseman wasted no time making changes. Enter Doug Peterson as head coach, with Roseman betting on a former backup quarterback with a reputation as a strong leader. He then turned his attention to the quarterback position. He made one of the boldest decisions of his career, trading up twice in the first round of the 2016 NFL Draft for FCS North Dakota State product Carson Wentz. Some questioned the cost at the number 2 overall pick, but Roseman saw something special in Wentz. He believed that Wentz could be the future of the franchise. The early results were promising. Wentz started every game his rookie season, winning 7 of them, and by 2017, he was playing at an MVP level. Roseman had also built an incredibly deep roster with veterans like defensive end Chris Long and receiver Alshon Jeffrey, and solidifying both lines of scrimmage, the importance of which Andy Reid had shown him. The Eagles stormed to a 13-3 record, but when Wentz went down with a torn ACL late in the season, their Super Bowl hopes seemed all but annihilated. Then came the legend of Nick Foles. Foles, whom Roseman had re-signed as a backup from the Andy Reid years, and led one of the most improbable playoff runs in NFL history. The Eagles defeated the Falcons, crushed the Vikings, and then stunned Tom Brady and the Patriots in Super Bowl 52. It was Philadelphia's first Super Bowl win in franchise history. And at the center of it all, Howie Roseman, holding that Lombardi trophy up high. For most GMs, delivering that championship would be enough, but for Roseman, it was back to the grindstone, trying to build a roster for 2018, 2019, and beyond. He needed to work harder at achieving it, and those seasons were filled with injuries and inconsistency. The team was competitive, but wasn't reaching their potential. He then made a move in the 2020 draft deemed widely divisive and controversial, betting big on Jalen Hurts, the quarterback out of the University of Oklahoma, in the second round of that draft. Some national pundits at the time viewed this as a mistake, given that Wentz had just signed a big contract extension, but Roseman had learned from his mistakes, and he knew the value of a good backup quarterback. He also made some very loud public comments at the time saying he wanted Philadelphia to be a quarterback factory. Now that is some 2020 vision, now that we're talking about this in 2025. My goodness. There were so many good intangibles about Jalen Hurts that, in retrospect, it seems trivial to talk about this. Hurts was widely known for losing his starting quarterback job at Alabama to Tua Tagovailoa and then transferring to Oklahoma. He was a good team player, but didn't seem like a franchise-altering presence. And those critics were wrong. And Hurts was a Heisman finalist. Sure enough, in 2021, Hurts' opportunity came up. Roseman traded Wentz to the Indianapolis Colts. Hurts takes over, and in 2022, he leads the Eagles back to the Super Bowl. Though they fell short against the Chiefs, Hurts played his heart out. 27 of 38 for 304 in the air, rushing for 70 yards and scoring 4 total touchdowns. It was clear that Roseman had built yet another perennial contender. His ability to rebuild and retool rosters on the fly was unmatched. He pulled off another blockbuster trade, acquiring wide receiver A.J. Brown from the Titans, to give Hurts a true #1 target. He also continued his dominance in the draft, landing game-changing defensive players like Jalen Carter out of the University of Georgia. Then came 2024, another dominant season, another deep playoff run, and finally, another Super Bowl win. This time over the 2-time defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs, 40-22. An absolute throttling. Howie Roseman did it again. The kid who sent hundreds of letters to NFL teams, the intern who sat at the corner of a secretary's desk, the NFL GM who had to go into exile before getting a second chance. Howie Roseman had turned the Eagles into one of the NFL's most consistent powerhouses, and he's not done yet. If you want more on the business of sports, please like this video, subscribe to Sports Capital, and turn on notifications. There's plenty more to come.